Okay, we'll go ahead and start in the Mazeroth. In Numbers 2, uh, it outlines all of the camp of Israel. And if you take all of these numbers and you line them out the way God said, this is what you come up with on the picture. And it really fits the Mazeroth, the constellation in the stars. And if you notice when you go to Numbers 2, Judah was listed first. And the reason why is because Reuben was born first, but he lost his firstborn right because of his sins. He was not righteous. And Simeon and Levi ended up being unrighteous, so they lost their rightship to the firstborn. In fact, Simeon and Levi does not even get, like Levi, they're scattered all throughout Israel in the cities. And this is part of the blessing, if you will, that comes from Jacob. They are prophecies about what will happen to these tribes. So if we go to 48, Joseph blesses Ephraim and Manasseh, which is Joseph's two sons, and gives them an inheritance in the kingdom. So now Levi's gone, you have 11, you had Ephraim and Manasseh, and Joseph is removed because Ephraim and Manasseh take his place in his position. So now you're back to 12. Okay, so in Genesis 49 is where where these blessings take place and where the constellations actually fit into the blessings of Israel. Okay. Now, I think it's interesting that most of your cultures around the world, just like the Noah's Ark story, if you go to the flood story, you go to all these different cultures, they have a flood story in their culture. It's messed up in some of them. They have names wrong and stuff like this, but the majority of them have 8 people that survived the flood with animals on a boat. Okay, and the same thing here. When you go to different cultures, they have an assignment of these constellations in the stars, and a lot of them are the same. So I think that's interesting that happens. Okay. The ecliptic is the path that the sun goes through each one of these constellations. Okay, and in Genesis 14, in Numbers 2, let me back up to Numbers 2 again. If you would take the camps of Israel, and outline your numbers, this is the picture that they would make. They would either make a cross or they would be in a circle around the tabernacle, which you have 4 names in Numbers 2 that are associated with a banner. One of them is a lion, one's a bull, one's a man, and one's an eagle. Anybody remember where they heard that before?
4 faces on the cherubs.
Yes. This is what is being pictured here. So it's in Ezekiel, I think 1 and 2, where the chariot,
Yeah.
Okay.
And the wheels.
Yep, and the wheels.
It's also in Revelation.
Yep, that's right. So I want us to see here in Genesis 1, 14, 15, it says, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens, and to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, years, and let the lights in the expanse of the heaven give light upon the earth," and it was so. The word signs is oat, and that can be many signs, okay? Each covenant is a sign. And then you have seasons, and this one's important. This is the one that doesn't fit. You got signs, season, days, and years. And you see the seasons are kind of out of place. Seasons is moed, and it means appointments or appointed times. It could mean seasons because God planned these around harvests. But the more important word is moed, the appointed times. You have days, which is yom, and you have years, shaneh. So for God to place these lights in the heavens to show us signs and his appointed times and days and years, okay? In Psalms 147:4, it says that he determined the numbers of the stars and he gives to all of them their names. So God named these stars, okay? In Job 38:31 and 32, it says, can you bind the chains of Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Can you lead forth the Mazeroth in their season? Or can you guide the bear with his children? So here are Pleiades named, Orion named, and then Mazeroth is the whole zodiac constellation. And God is saying, can you lead these out? The bear is Ursula Major with Ursula Minor, the little bear. So God is asking Job, you know about these, and this is the oldest book of the Bible. Can you do anything with them? So he's talking to him as if he already knows about these. Okay? If you go to, where's Psalms? Oh, forgot that, sorry. Okay. It says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day into day they pour forth speech, night after night they show knowledge. There is no speech nor language, their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoice as a strong man to run his course. For his going forth is from the ends of heaven, and his circuit to the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. This obviously has a ton of Mazeroth language in it. The line, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the thing I want you to see here is there is no speech or language. What did we start out with? We started out with one language. So why is he saying that there's no speech or language in a plural form, that their voice is not heard? Because they obviously would have known what these were at the Tower of Babel before the languages were given and dispersed. So we can take this by the Word of God. I can see that it goes all the way back to at least the understanding of the Tower of Babel. Okay, so this isn't something that is made up. There is a lot of misunderstanding and 2,000 years, 3,000 years of loss of information, and we're trying to put this all together now. Okay? And it's interesting that when you go to these other cultures, they have the same pictures and the same understandings on their Mazeroth in the same places. So Romans 1:18-20 says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. Could he be talking about the Mazeroth here? You know that this stuff didn't happen by random chance. Okay, and then when you go to Genesis 49, we're going to dissect these words here, these tribes, and show you what's going on here. So, what do I have up here? Yeah, the Mazeroth is the Hebrew name, is Garland of Crowns. And the zodiac is the way or path of the sun, and so are the constellations. So in verse 1, it says, then Jacob called his sons and said, gather yourselves together that I may tell you what shall happen in the days to come. Jacob is prophesying what's going to happen to them in the future. And he says, assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob, listen to Israel your father. Why is he using both his names here? He started out as Jacob. God gave him Israel. There is a earthly, a Adamic name that comes from Adam with a sin nature, and then God gives you a new name, Israel. And that's what he's pointing them to here. You sons of Jacob, you listen, you're still of the Adamic nature, the sin nature. Listen to Israel, the spiritual nature. Okay? So when you go to verse 3, these pictures here are in Egypt. Okay, this one I think is from like the Babylon area, Persia. They have the lion on the dragon or serpent with a star with the virgin behind it. So how do they come up with this? Okay, this is from the temple at Dendra, which is, I believe, in Egypt. And notice that they have the same constellation. See these Pisces, the fish? And that's a poor deal. I can see Aries, the lamb. They're in the positions that they are in the Mazeroth. Here's a embellished picture of it. And another one, so you can see the actual constellation. They have this in Egypt. Okay, Moses and the Israelites came from Egypt, so this even goes back to then. Okay, now look at this picture here. This, you guys know, is the picture that's on the synagogue floors in Galilee. Okay, tell me what you guys see with this that stands out to you.
The four faces in the center.
The four faces in the center. What are those?
There's 5 faces in the center.
Well, there are, yes.
Well, the big one in the center is all-seeing God with the things above his head, the crown. And then the four faces are the cherubs around him, I would say.
Okay.
And the wheels are spinning below.
Yep. He's in a chariot.
And the stars may represent actually all-seeing eyes. I don't know for sure about that.
Well, I think it's interesting that if you count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I think that's interesting. You have, this represents the sun that the constellations go around. You have the sun, Jesus, coming back on the 4 horses and chariots. You have the 4 angels at the 4 corners of the earth, and the Mazeroth. This is their constellations. And this is what bothers me when I hear people say that they were worshiping the zodiac, and that's why God judged them. That isn't what that is. That's the camp of Israel. That's the zodiac, and that's their calendar. And that's telling you prophetically that everything operates around the sun, in my opinion, S-O-N, and he's coming back on his chariot with the 4 horses. So, anyway, let me see what else I got here. Okay. They're in the same order of the constellations. This one's one goes one way and this one goes the other way. It's just depends on your perspective, but they're in the same order, even though they're backwards. Okay, and you have the 4 banners on each side, and they coincide with the Mazeroth. So, in verse 3, here we go. Okay. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power, unstable as water. You shall not have preeminence because you went up to a father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. So he is from Leah. He's the first son born, and he's the firstborn. And Reuben means see a son. Okay, notice how all of these names, when you get the meaning of the names, they're all pointing to Christ. All of this points to Christ. The names in the suns, the constellations, all of this declares the glory of God and his redemption for us. Okay. Now, because Reuben was born first, he didn't get the firstborn right because he was unrighteous. So it went to someone else. Now, the firstborn had 3 titles with it, right? You had the firstborn, which got the firstborn right and the double portion so that you can take care of the family. You had the priesthood and you had the kingship. Well, the priesthood went to Levi and the kingship went to Judah. And Joseph got the birthright that passed on to his 2 sons. Okay? So Reuben is represented by Aquarius, and unstable as waters. Can you guys find out a constellation that is dealing with water? Aquarius is the man pouring out water. Okay? And Jesus is pictured in this. It says in Numbers 24:7, water shall flow from his buckets, and his seed shall be many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom be exalted. So this is also a picture of Christ's coming and being living water. Jesus is the living water for us in Revelation 21:6. Okay, and then you come to Simeon and Levi. All right, and it says that Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung an ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So here, Jacob's prophesying you're going to be scattered in Israel, and that's exactly what happened. Levi got the 48 cities with no inheritance all throughout Israel. Simeon, he only had about, I think, 15 cities, and he eventually got absorbed into Judah. So this prophecy has been fulfilled. Now, these guys were number 2 and number 3, and they come from Leah, and they are blessed together. Simeon means he who hears, and Levi means joined or connected. So you can see how these picture Christ. Okay. They also picture Christ in the twofold nature. Since these are twins, they are in the same constellation. You have 2. And these picture God's twofold nature of God and man, and his twofold work of suffering and glory. And in the hand of one of these is the branch. It's called a netzer. What does that name sound like? Netzer. Nazarene, Nazareth. He came from Nazareth. He would be a Nazarene, and Nazareth means branch. So he is going to be the branch. Okay. Anyone want to take a guess at what this constellation would be, with 2 people being blessed as one? Gemini. You got 2 people. And we actually see this in Acts 28:11. It says, after 3 months we sailed from Alexandria a ship whose figurehead, I think I already had that up here, didn't I? Whose figurehead, nope, I didn't. Okay, he would be Gemini, which would be, where are they at? Right there. Okay. And that's what it looks like in the sky. And in Acts 28:11 it says, after 3 months we sailed an Alexandrian ship whose figurehead was the twin brothers which had wintered in the island. Now, Castor and Pollux are the 2 heads. And look at what you have here. Castor and Pollux. So these are all the way back to Acts 28. Okay, and inside of this constellation, in the constellations you have 12, and then each one of these constellations have 3 what they call deacons with them. They're little small constellations that add to and embellish the story that's being told with each one of these. So with each one of these, you actually have 4. One big one and 3 smaller ones if you want to look for them. In this constellation, you have Apollo and Hercules, which means judge or ruler. And okay.
What's that 2392 mean under the blue line over to the left?
Actually, I don't know. I don't know. So,
I guess it must be a measurement of where it's at
Oh,
in the sky, you know, almost like
Like longitude, latitude?
Right, that's what I would say, but
that'd be my guess. Okay, which one is this? Oh, I already. See, I can't see what I'm doing here. The PowerPoints that I have for me are not the same. They don't carry over right to these computers, so I'm not able to see what I'm doing without looking at it. Okay, so here we're on Judah. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hands shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He has stooped down. He is crouched as a lion and as a lioness who dares rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the people. Binding his foal of the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He has washed his garments in wine and vesture in blood of grapes. His eyes darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. So Judah is number 4 from Leah, and it means his name means praise, and he will be the first, even though Reuben was born first. So Judah is listed first in Numbers 2 in the camp of Israel, and this is why. And he has his hands on the neck of the enemy, shows that he will have the victory, and the conqueror will come from Judah. Okay, in Philippians 2:9-11, it says, therefore God has also exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that the name of Jesus and every knee shall bow, of those in heaven and those on earth and those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. It's in Philippians 2:9-11.
The word under there, does that mean the graves? The people in the graves?
Yeah, I believe so. It says those on the earth and those under the earth. I believe that would be the ones in the grave. He is going to, everyone, whether you're alive or dead, will bow the knee to Christ. Okay.
it's interesting in the previous slide also, in 11 where they're talking about the donkey's colt,
Yeah.
where they also have the colt that Jesus rode in on.
And Jacob is prophesying this at least 1,500 years prior. Let's see, it's going to be like 19. This is being prophesied 1,900 years prior to Christ. The Exodus was like 1450, and if you add 430 years to that, it'd be like 1880, so 1900 years roughly. Okay, guess what constellation Judah represents? Leo, the king. Okay, and we talked about this last week when we were talking about the constellations. And notice Regulus is in the heart of the Leo the lion. And you can kind of see how these picture this a little bit, even though they're stick figures. Okay. And it doesn't show it in this picture, but Hydra, the snake, is down here. And that's why you saw that picture, that one where the lion is on top of the snake or the dragon. This is how it is pictured. You just can't see it in that picture. Okay, Zebulun shall dwell at the shore of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. So he is number 6 from Leah, and his name means glorious dwelling place. Okay. Josephus records that the tribe of Zebulun's lot included the land which lay as far as the lake of Gennesaret, which is Galilee, and that which belonged to Carmel by the sea. So they're telling you where his, and it, something else, it says dwell at the shore of the sea. That word is mistranslated in most of our Bibles. It should be sea. It's yamim. That's plural, not yam. So it should have been translated sea. So it's telling you that he's going to dwell between the Sea of Galilee and the Sea of Mediterranean, the two seas. And that's actually what happened. Okay. Sidon means catching fish. And you can see that in Bethsaida. Remember Bethsaida? Bethsaida is house of fish. Well, Sidon is, catching fish or plenty of fish. And let's see, Zebulun would be portrayed as the crab cancer, since he's by the seas. There's the crab right there. And you have to roll these around to match. See, these are looking this way, like two plates coming together, and as you turn, they rotate and turn. So, how are you doing? So this is Cancer the Crab, and within this constellation, it has the Argo, the ship, within the constellation. And it says you will be a haven of ships. And you have Ursa Minor and Ursa Major, which are the bears. There's Big Bear and Little Bear, the Big Dippers. So all of those are your deacons. Okay, you've got your constellation, and then you have your deacons that go with that to add to the story. And that's what's pulling out of the scripture here. Ships, the bears. Okay. And there's what the constellation would look like if you looked at it. I had to add a picture so you could see how they get a crab out of that 2 sticks. You would never look at these and say, oh, that looks like a crab.
No.
Okay, but yet you've got these constellations throughout the cultures over all of the world. Why do you have these constellations out of this? It was given to them, and they carried it on. Okay.
They studied the heavens for centuries.
Yes. Yep. God put them there for signs, didn't he?
Yeah.
He put them there so you would know when he's coming. And okay, Issachar. Issachar is a strong donkey crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good and that the land was pleasant, so he bowed his shoulder to bear and became a servant of forced labor. Okay, number 9 is this child, Issachar, and he came from Leah's handmaid, Zilpah, and his name means he is wages. So you see how all these names embellish Christ and what he is going to do for us. A donkey is a servant. Jesus is our servant. Mark portrays Christ as our servant in the Gospels. And he is now at rest between 2 sheepfolds. Okay. John 10:14 14 to 16 says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and am known by my own. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. So, what kind of servant animal do you think this would fit?
Ox?
Yeah, the ox, the bull. So here you have Taurus, the bull, and that's what the constellations look like. In fact, Orion, is pointing to him. And notice Pleiades is up here. God was speaking that here in Job. So there's your servant animal. And then we come to Dan. Dan shall judge his people, one as tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider falls backwards. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. He's number 5 from Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, and Dan means judge. Okay, so here's my maid Bilhah. In Genesis 30, 1 to 6, you see this in when she was given to have him for birth. It says, here's my maid Bilhah, go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her. Then she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as a wife, and Jacob went into her, and Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged my case. So we see the name being brought out here in the birth. And he also heard my voice and gave me a son, and therefore she called his name Dan, judge. Okay. Samson was a judge of Israel that came from Dan. And the word serpent is Nachash here. It's the same one that goes all the way to Genesis, and it's the same one that goes all the way to when the serpent was lifted up. So, guess what a serpent does? It bites you and it pierces your heel. So guess what constellation you're... Oh,
Scorpio, right?
Scorpio.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scorpio is, and when you get a bigger picture of that, I don't know if I put this in here, there's what it looks like without the picture embellishments. But it actually is piercing the heel of, I believe it's Hercules, I think, or Ophiuchus, I'm sorry. Okay, that's the man that's struggling with the snake, Ophiuchus. It's also named Hercules, and he's the one conquering the snake, but yet he's being stung in the heel by the scorpion. Okay. Oh. Okay, so in verse 19, raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid their heels. That's all you got. Okay, number 7 is this child, and he's Leah's maidservant from Zilpah. And Gad means troop or fortune, and this is a symbol of victory. Okay. Gad is an anagram. If you take Gad and you turn the words around, what do you have? Dag. What is it in Hebrew, Sherry?
Fish.
Dog. Fish. Yes, dog is fish. So here you have, what do you think his constellation might be? Pisces. Yeah, the 2 fish. If you see them down here, the 2 fish connected with a ribbon is going to be Pisces, and that's what it looks like in the sky. Okay. The band means he comes. And it unites the 2 fish. Who do you think the 2 fish are? That is being united in Christ, the Jew and Gentile. And in this constellation, you also have Andromeda, the chained woman, and Cephas, the crowned king. So then we come to Asher, and Asher said, food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. That's all we got. He's number 8, Leah's maidservant Zilpah. And Asher means happy, and comes from, it comes from the word ashar, which means straight. And he was allotted the fertile ground around Mount Carmel going north. And he provided the delicacies for the kings in this area. It's very fertile ground. And if you guys remember last week, we talked about the 2 people that are left out of our Christmas stories. Who are they?
Anna and Simeon.
Anna and Simeon. Anna, a prophetess of the daughter of Phanuel, which is face of God, of the tribe of Asher. Okay, Asher means happy. Do you think she was happy when she was holding the baby Jesus and saying, "This is your consolation of Israel"? Okay. She is represented by Virgo, who holds a ear of wheat. This is where the bread comes from, the bread of life. And the constellations in this are Coma, which are the 12 stars around her head, and Centaurus, which has 2 natures, man and God, holding a spear, and Boots, a man walking, called the branch, and called Arcturus. Arcturus is in this constellation. Arcturus is the big star off the handle of the Big Dipper. If you find the Big Dipper and the handle kind of curves, it arcs off to Arcturus. That's the star. And then you speed off to Spica, which is the next one.
North
Okay.
Star would be pointed out that way too.
The North Star comes out of the cup, the other side. Yeah, you find the North Star by the Big Dipper.
When that passage says he named each one of them, would he be talking about the constellations he put in the sky, or would it be all the stars that's in the sky?
Both. God named them all. Yep. And guess what? When he made Adam, he already made him with the understanding of language and words, so he can talk to him. So he already had the understanding in his mind, didn't he, of what all this stuff was? As he named all the animals,
Yep.
God named all the stars and the constellations. They all declare his glory and his redemptive work. Okay, Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. This is number 6 from Rachel's maidservant Bilhah. And Rachel means little lamb. Naphtali means wrestling or twisting, and he's a deer let loose. Okay. He is, his name comes from the word tale, which is ram or lamb. Guess what constellation you think he fits? Huh? Well, close. The lamb. Yeah, very, very close though. It's another animal that you use. So the 3 conjuncting constellations, the deacons, are Cassiopeia, the enthroned woman, Cetus, the sea monster, and Perseus, the breaker. Okay. So then you come to Joseph. Joseph is a fruitful bow by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd of the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, by Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breast of the woman, of the womb. The blessings of the Father are mighty beyond the blessings of the parents, up to the bounties of everlasting hills. May they be heard on the head of Joseph, on the bow of him who has set apart from his brothers. So Joseph was set apart from his brothers. He comes from Rachel. He's number 11, and it means fruitful son. His name is taken from Asaph, which means taken, and Yosef, which means adds. So God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph, and the Lord shall add to me another son. So you see how these names are embellishing Christ. Okay. His constellation is Sagittarius, and he's depicted as the archer, the bowman, that will not miss the mark. You know, we sin, and when you sin, you miss the mark. Well, Jesus Christ won't, okay? He also has in this constellation Lyra the harp, which is for the conqueror. You have Ara the altar, which indicates God's fire of judgment on his enemies. And you got Draco the dragon, who is the old serpent that is cast down from heaven to earth. So that's what's in those constellations. And then you come to Benjamin. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, and in the evening devouring the spoil. He is number 12 from Rachel. Son of my sorrow is what she named him first, Ben-Oni. But Jacob, or Israel, changed his name to Benjamin, son of my right hand. So he is represented by Capricorn. And on the Egyptian sphere, according to, let's see. I put this up here so you can see how they got that out of that, because you wouldn't get Capricorn out of that until you put the ram up there and see how they come up with that. But the accompanying deacons that go with that is Sagitta, the arrow representing the arrow of God sent forth, and then Aquila, the eagle, which is smitten, one falling, and then Delphinus, the dolphin, who is the dead one rising. So I didn't get into the deacons and all that stuff that also embellish Christ's glory and what he has done for us. I went through this really quickly just to give you the 12 tribes and how they fit the 12 constellations. And the 4 pictures with the faces on, the face of a man, face of an eagle, face of an ox, and a face of a lion. You realize that these are also the 4 Gospels. Mark depicts Christ as the servant, which is the ox. You have Luke depicting Christ as man. You have John depicting Christ as God, and you got Matthew depicting Christ as king. So here you've got a foreshadowing of the 4 Gospels in the Old Testament also tied to that. So I'm going to look at just some of these pictures here and kind of tell you these. This is a more full picture of the Mazeroth we was looking at before. And there's a close-up. And I'm just going to play some things here. You see lion on top of the dragon, and Virgo's right behind him. You have Ursula the bear. You've got Virgo holding a child. And you see these things on the Egyptian walls. So anyway, here's just a round picture that goes around Earth and what you're going to see. And how you determine what month you're in is the sun is in that particular constellation, so you can't see it. So that's how you know what month you're in. And
Got the archer.
yep, that's the archer, right? Shooting, and just more embellished pictures. How do we get these pictures like this in the same positions unless they had the understanding going all the way back?
You said unless they have the understanding of what?
I'm sorry?
You said unless they have the understanding of what?
Unless they had these understandings. These, we can trace these, in my opinion, I can show you how all of these constellations go back to the Tower of Babel before one language was divided into many languages. So these constellations pour forth speech night after night, declaring the glory of God for us. And they had the understanding back then. Job was confronted by God and said, you know, can you lead out the Mazeroth? Okay, can you unloosen the belt of Orion? They knew these constellations all the way back prior to Abraham, and I think it goes all the way back prior to Babel. And I think Adam and Eve probably would have understood these. Gospel in the stars. They all declare God. So, yeah, Gospel in the Stars. Actually, Gospel in the Stars is a title given to the teachings that, who's the guy that was down in Florida that died, the Presbyterian?
Robbie? Or,
No. He died about 7, 8 years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Anyway, he's one of the ones that done the Gospel of the Stars, that showed you all this stuff. And all the people that deal with this go back to E.W. Bollinger. E.W. Bollinger is the foundation book that tells you about the understanding of the Mazeroth, the Gospel in the Stars. He also does Numbers and the other stuff. So E.W. Bollinger is the guy that I think that started with in explaining how all this came about, and then everybody else takes his work and adds to it and gets more information. Why can't I think of his name?
How do you spell his name? Bollinger, you said?
Yeah, E.W. Bollinger is the guy that everybody uses to understand this. So,
She wanted you to spell his name.
huh?
She wanted you to spell his name.
Oh, spell his name? E.W. Bollinger. Bollinger.
did you have the 10th one also?
Did I have the what?
The 10th constellation?
The 10th constellation. Did I miss one?
You did.
We missed one.
Okay.
Keep you honest. They're not gonna let you off that easy, John.
Well, good. Well,
That'd be next week.
that's going to be next week.
Right on.
Okay, perfect. I knew that's what you were thinking ahead of time.
All right. Well, let's see. Libra. Okay, I didn't do Libra, did I? The scales. Huh?
Leo, right?
You missed my
You got Leo.
I got Leo, the king.
Leave this one we missed. I
Libra.
wrote them all down.
Okay. That one is attached to Scorpio. If you see here, you got Scorpio. Libra's right next to it. And let me see if I can. Here. I think that was it. Libra and Scorpio. There's Scorpios up here. And there's the scales. When you look at them, they're kind of almost attached. And
Dates have to do with dates.
what do the dates have to do with it?
Like if they have January the 24th to February the 6th. You know, like.
Yeah. Well, that's the months of the Jewish calendar, I believe, is probably what they're going to point to more. We have a Gregorian calendar is what we follow, and our months begin differently than the Jewish calendar that God established in His Word start. They start Libra. Yeah, I don't know the Gregorian dates for those, but they're kind of in the middle of our months, aren't they? I'm going to find the one I was telling you about. It's on there it is. See how they kind of are together, even though Libra's in here. So I don't know why that one is not listed. I do know that you have Levi that isn't even listed here. He's taken out. You have those two represented in Gemini as the blessing. But Levi is dispersed, Simeon is dispersed, so that one really has lost its pointing to Levi and Simeon. But then you have Joseph being removed when he went to Egypt, but his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, get applied back. So then you have the two going back. And I wonder if part of that isn't where that is. And I'm not totally convinced that all of these are exactly the way they should be. You can only take God's word and try to take the words out and see what the meanings are and how these go. We may have a couple of these mismatched. Okay, does it make sense? For instance, Dan, I told you that was a different Scorpio, is what I believe I told you that was. Well, why couldn't that be the scales judge weighing the balance?
Yeah.
I don't know. When there are four that we know that everybody agrees with, that I know of anyway, and they're Leo and I believe Reuben and Scorpio, which would be Dan, which would be the snake, and then you have the eagle. So those four pretty much everybody agrees with. From there, you have to use scripture and see what scripture says about what their blessing is, where they were located, and pull this stuff out in order to be able to associate what they were about.
So what do you believe in then?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Those are the ones that you believe in what?
Well, these are the four. Let's see, let me go back all the way to the beginning. These are the four that are depicted in the banners of Israel when they set up the camps. You have the lion, the man, the ox, and the eagle. And these are all represented in those constellations, and they're the camp of Israel. They're the banners that they use. And this is also portrayed in Ezekiel, when 1 and 2, when the chariot comes and you have the face of a lion on one side and the eagle and the ox. So that's why I'm tying those together, is because they're actually pointing to Christ, and they're also are tied again in Revelation when Christ is going to come again. And the camp of Israel is depicted in these. Let me see if I can pull up the chart. I don't know if you were in here when we discussed this or not, but the camps of Israel, these are on the synagogues in Galilee. And this is their camps. This is the constellations that go around the sun. And he's riding a chariot on chariot wheels with 4 horses. This is depicting him coming back in Revelation with the 4 horses and the chariot. And you have the 4 angels on the 4 corners of the earth tied to this. So they understood these back then as constellations and depicting the glory of God in the heavens. And there is a misunderstanding that the constellations are Astrology. Astrology is studying the stars to see what they say about you. That's wrong. That's from Satan. When you look at the stars, they declare the glory of God and they tell about Him, not you. So that's the difference between looking at the stars and seeing what they say about God and looking at the stars, your horoscope, and seeing what they say about you. You don't look and see what they say about you. It's not about you. It's about Him.